Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to wherever you are. We are back with another episode of our Kautilya Podcast, India and the World. Uh, we are three common people who are living in three different parts of the world, and we just want to share our opinions and our views on what's happening, across, in India and in the world. Anant हमारे साथ आज missing है. He's had some commitments, so he may not be able to make it. But we will get started with what we wanted to talk today. So Saurav, I actually was looking at the news here on the American side over the last 2 3 weeks. One aspect which is bothering most Indians, especially and more immigrants in general, has been the immigration system of American US. Let's put it that way. Key how they are entering, immigrants or how they want to admit them. And so, um, I was looking at some information, and then it made me realize कि यहाँ पे I think people have a very limited view of how the American immigration system works and the differences and the nuances between if a skilled worker wants to get in versus your mommy wants to get in, let's put it that way, as a relative. So I thought I give a quick introduction or information on what the American uh, immigration is all about, and I thought I'd pass that information to our audiences. So अगर लोगों ने देखा होगा न्यूज में आजकल यूएस इमिग्रेशन का हमेशा कुछ ना कुछ न्यूज आते रहता है कि
Yep,
इंडियंस वेट कर
yep.
रहे हैं एंड ऑल दैट and now you look at it, it's in the global media now. So the Wall Street Journal last week was covering that how Canada was wooing the American H-1B visa holders who are really fed up with the immigration system and are frustrated and are mentally harassed. You can say there is a lot of problems with the way it is, and so they're wanting to move to Canada. And I think Canada in 2 days has just had like 10,000 applicants, what they wanted to do, wanting to move, whoever all have H-1B visas. You could see the other article from the Wall Street was the backlog, the green card backlog. Green card is the American US permanent resident ka dusra naam. The backlog is so bad that it's actually impacting the economy. Nurses in hospitals are seeing already the shortages where nurses usually are also multicultural, where not just the American nurses, you have nurses from India, Philippines, parts of Middle East who are good at training of nurses and in both in hospitals, nursing homes, elder care, and they're all struggling because the staffing is a problem. And so, what I wanted to cover today was the immigration woes. I wanted to bring from an Indian lens, considering I'm an Indian. I have just gone through all of this motions, and so it's all fresh for me. So JFK in 1958 essay in the Nation of Immigrants wrote that immigration policy should be generous, it should be fair, it should be flexible. With such a policy, we can turn to the world and to our own past with clean hands and clear conscience. Unfortunately, America has not listened to JFK here. Yes, they have made some strides in 65 after his death, but really, today's American immigration is not hearing or listening to what JFK said in 1958. So, man, I wanted to give a big background of the whole immigration waves to America, just to give a set the context ki hua kya hai in the past and what's happening now. So if you look at the waves since the time of independence from after 1776, 1820, as from the early 18th century after the American got independence, initially the wave has always been the Western Europeans, primarily, or Britain and the Northern Europeans from Scandinavia, and that wave lasted the entire early mid to 19th century, and that's what you will see. All the second, third generation of those families are now the core American group. That's called frontier expansion. That's the as America expanded and America expanded their colonies and moved westward. This is the first
Mhm.
set of the immigrants who moved to America. उसके बाद आया आपके इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन फेज में you had southern and eastern Europeans who started to move late 18th century say early 20 late 19th century say early 20th century तक. This is that during the peak World War One, lot of people from southern Europe, Italians, Eastern Europe, coming from Poland and other parts of the Eastern Europe started to move into it. Then there was a pause where immigration actually went down, where there was limited immigration, especially during World War II. Late late 1930s के बाद America also had depression, the Great Recession of 1929 shock, and so immigration really stopped their wave. Again, all of this until 1960 was always 1965 was always the Western Europeans, the Europeans. जो बोल सकते हैं हम, as a brown skin we can say the white color skin people. Even the Immigration Act was restricting Asians and Indians and the other non-white skinned people as part of the immigration, because they really wanted to make sure that that immigration stayed around. 65 May, America had a big Immigration Act update done. So this was right after JFK died, and 3 years later. Um, they removed the race clause in the act that Asians Americans also can move in. So previously they were had a lot of restrictions for Asians, including Indians, including Chinese, and all the East Asian nationalities. And so that race quota was removed. And so you see, last 55 years, say 58 years, the immigration primarily has been driven by Asia and Latin America. So you had people from Mexico, you had people from Brazil, Argentina, you had people from India, China, Vietnam, Philippines, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, all of those nationalities started to move, and you can see the diversity of America changing in the last 60 years. So since 1783, you can say just the time, 86 million Americans have migrated to America. So, I say land of immigrants. अब बोल सकते हैं आज के 300 million population में 86 million and the family and the descendants. So you can say almost the a huge chunk of percentage. I mean, everyone in America is an immigrant. बोलते हैं. You can see how many people moved, and then they raised their families here, and the next generation moved in. Over this period of time, since frontier expansion to post 1965 migration, you had the legal framework, policies, the political game state. How the American policies evolved. The legislation changed over the time, and so you can see it moved from Western European immigrants to all the way to now to the Asian immigrants. The interesting part when I was digging this one, Saurav, was the last major skilled immigration update happened in 1990, the Immigration Act of 1990, where they were, updates were done for the whole H-1B program, what we have it today, and how Americans can bring the employment-based immigration. That's the term, the actual term of the skilled immigration. So आपका जो इमिग्रेशन जो है 50 साल पुराना ही लॉस के बने हैं, 30 years से कुछ मेजर अपडेट्स नहीं हुए हैं. So you really the system in 21st century is really outdated, it's complicated, and it's uncompetitive. And the negative is being felt only by one nationality most, which is Indian nationals, because the laws haven't changed in the last 30 odd years. So my goal today was just to review this, what the whole thing is, and inform our audience ki kya ho raha hai. Really, I wanted to put that disclaimer. I don't want to discourage our Indian nationals saying कि आप USA मत आओ. By all means, come for it. It's still one of the greatest countries to be in and live in. I just want to give that reality check to everyone who's in India, who's outside USA. Many millions who want to come here, that have that realistic expectations of what you're getting into. A funny tidbit, an interesting tidbit was your top 3 nationalities in US who foreign born population in 1960, when John F. Kennedy wrote that nation of 2 years right after when he wrote that, was Italian, German, and Canadian. In 2017, when Trump was the running president, and then still holds true as Biden is the president, it's Mexican, Indian, and China. So you can see how the dramatic nationalities has changed in the last 50 years. One of the interesting things when you look into the US immigration system is the way it is structured. So I wanted to give a quick summary of what the immigration system looks like. Anyone who's an immediate family of a US citizen, they can bring their spouses, unmarried children, and their parents. And so that's that system exists for them. But the biggest chunk of it, if you look at there are many categories, but the biggest chunk of it is 66% of the immigration quota, the number of green cards which will be allotted, is either to the relatives of the US citizens, which is the bulk of it, or to the family sponsored categories. Family sponsored is aap apne mummy papa ko lana chahte ho, you want to bring your sons and daughters, you want to bring your brother and sisters, you want to bring your unmarried children. Those are 225,000 visa categories today. That's what is allocated every year for them to move. And obviously, the US citizens can always bring their immediate relatives and, this thing. So it's always prioritized family-based immigration since 1950s. This has been the norm because that's how been the system of it. If you look at the skilled immigration, that's only 14% of the entire green cards given every year. Us 14% represents around 140,000 green cards, which means it's divided in five different categories. So one category is you would be a PhD holder, someone who's an extraordinary, scientist or a researcher or an international executive or a manager. You could One category is for who was a master's holder who came to USA to study for his master's, and the other category is for person who came and studied for his H1B on-site opportunity jo India mein bolte hain, move from TCS and all of that. That's your employment based preferences. One, two, and three categories, which is on the right side. You look at the limits, that's 40,000 per category worldwide, not just Indians, worldwide. So the main construct is agar 100 green card de rahe hain, just only 14% of those green cards are allocated to skilled immigration. And Indians are just one part of that 14% because they have to prioritize and give it to segregate to all other nationalities. Another interesting part, if you look at it here, in Saurav, which was interesting for me, was refugees. President sets the annual ceiling limits for refugees arrival. So in Trump's administration era, they reduced that refugee limit, asylum limit, depending on how they wanted it. Biden has raised that limit. I mean, so a Ukraine crisis, he wants to bring in refugees. Biden can set an executive order, and then they could be a refugees arrival coming in through. America did it for Iraq, Afghanistan refugees. Then there is no limit for asylum. So anyone who's running away from persecuted countries can always apply for asylum and get to the border. What's happening at the southern border state. And then there is something called diversity visa, just to make sure that visas need to be not just Indians and Chinese, but people outside Indians and Chinese, people from Nepal, people from Laos, anyone who's diverse. There is a lottery for them. Again, there is also certain section of Iraqis and Afghanistanis who work for US government, who is also victims of human trafficking. All of this are all separate categories here into it. So really, the big statement is America doesn't care about skilled immigration based on today's immigration system. Most of them is all family based. This is the flowchart of immigration system. I kid you not. This is the true statement of how you get a green card. I'm not going to go into the details here, but what you see in orange segment here is all the skill based, employment based immigration. So you have these five categories: EB1, EB2, EB3, EB4, EB5. EB1 is all your priority workers, researchers, extraordinary scientists, international executives and managers. EB2 is your advanced master's degree holder. EB3 is your professionals. EB4 is your special workers. EB5 is your investor. Look at the amount of scrutiny and amount of process the orange buckets are. That's all employment based immigration. हर एक step पे there is a control to it. You see a lot of stories here. It basically says एक जमाने में अगर आप qualify नहीं हो रहे हो, you're not eligible for it. The one in blue here is the family based immigration. So basically all they check is आपका कोई family member है, हाँ या ना. Do you have a relative? Yes. Do you have a spouse? Yes. Do you qualify for the family based immigration? Rules are pretty. I'm not saying the rules are simpler. The rules are straightforward, and so you can apply for the visa, and then it's just a basic process. But for the immigration side of the things, there has to be a labor certification. Just an example. Now, how to check the American jobs nahi ja rahe and all. People have this very wrong notion that when they get a green card, they're displacing this thing, displaying an American holder. Employers have to file labor certification before they even do all of the green card whole process, so that you're not displacing an American holder. If you get a qualified US worker, you're not eligible to get a green card. Then you have to get a labor certification done. Then there has to be a visa available. You saw the numbers are only 140,000. So the process is so complex. And the one on the green, on the orange side here is the immigration through the diversity visa, and then immigration through the. Uh, I see Anant is joining. Sorry, I see
Hi
Anant
guys.
has. Hey, Anand, we
Hey
just
Anant.
started. We
Hey,
just
sorry I'm
started.
late.
No worries, no worries. We just started with the context of the whole the American, the immigration system and how it's so convoluted and this thing. And I know the moment you see it, you see this flowchart. This I was explaining to Saurav and the audience is this is a flowchart to get to a U.S. green card. It is convoluted, it is chaotic, it's complicated, and then you can see why the struggles are so real for a skilled based immigration because there's so many controls and at the same time the limits are so less. I want to
What
give
the
a
hell is
current.
this?
That is
What the hell is
the
that?
that is the flowchart of a US green card. How do you get a US green card? This is the entire process.
Dude, I'm so glad I'm living in Norway right now.
I know.
Seriously, just looking at this makes me depressed.
All right. So, what is the current state for Indian nationals? I was just telling you the audience was there are only 140,000 green cards available in the skill-based immigration. That's 14% of all green cards. But there is a rule in the 140,000 green card, which now it's becoming more vocal in the media. There is a quota by country. So they don't want one country to hog all visas. So there is a 7% country cap on green cards. So Indians are only theoretically allowed 8,500 green cards every year. And by the way, this includes dependents. So if you're a family of four, husband, wife, you're actually using four green cards as opposed to one green card per family. So you can look at, I mean, as an example, simple math. If you're a family of four, you could only 2,000 families of Indian origin can get green card every year. I'm just simplifying it, but that's kind of like how things are. Although the process says unused cards. I mean, as the year goes by, if the other countries don't use it, they allocate that to the Indian national. But the way, if you look at this slide, the supply and demand is so skewed. So if you look at the
Arvind,
categories, yeah,
do you know
so
why there is a 7% country cap? Any
that's the
reason
law.
why?
There's a law.
Yeah, but
That's
on
the
what basis was that law created?
so the law was created, and that's what. So what you missed was the law was created in 1950s, the last Immigration Policy Act. The America has always prioritized family-based immigration. So the family-based immigration meant the focus was always to the Western Europeans and the Western nations back in the day. So they didn't. First of all, until 65, there was never immigration policies for Asians and Chinese and Indians and the Asian population. 65, there was an act change, and so they removed the race-based quota, but they added this 7% cap. The intent was no one country should overtly take all the green cards, and America remains diverse. Theoretically, a great concept when it was happened in 1965. Unfortunately, in 2023, that law is antiquated and outdated.
Hmm.
So, if you look at it, so the way it works on the skilled based immigration is it starts on it's like a pool of water. So on the EB1 they'll look at available visas exceed demand. The answer is yes. Okay, then visas not required will fall to EB2. So it's like a next category will get it. If they are not using it, the next category would get it. If the demand is high, so then we'll use all the categories. If the available visas exceed demand, no, use all the numbers. So if everyone is choking on the first category and everyone's moving there, the below categories are not going to get the visas. It's like the dropping of the pool. If you look at the numbers on the right side, there are 7,000 Indians as we speak today. This is August 20. This is the March 2023. As we speak in the 2023 data, there are 7,000 Indian nationals awaiting availability of the green card in the first category. There are 358,000 people in the second category in the Indians who are awaiting visa. There are 115,197 applicants in the third category of the visa, which is EB3. If you look at the total Indians, 482,697 are actually awaiting it. And if you look at on the left side, available visas exceed demand, probably is going to be the answer is no. So they will start to use the numbers, in which case the backlog will keep on growing. And what's really happening is you
Maybe.
see the impact. What's today? Today, immigration system is processing applications submitted in 2009 to 2012 for all Indians. And that is the backlog state of it. So if someone who's a researcher, someone who's a Harvard MBA, you please stand in line, because someone who's applied who's in 2011 is getting his number right now. It is unfortunate to see this the mechanism here, that the America prioritizes family-based immigration over someone who's skilled researcher, who's a skilled scientist, who's a skilled PhD holder who could help the economy, as opposed to someone who's coming, let's say as a brother of a US citizen. We're not saying that's not
I
bad.
think the
We're saying it's the priority of America has always been family-based. So Anand, you missed one slide
yeah.
here. I wanted to give you that perspective here. This is a
I think
slide I was
looking at your
tracking.
numbers so far, looking at that number, I think it's best to be a religious worker. Maybe I should become a pastor and move to the US.
Oh,
Maybe my
yeah,
chances are
that's
better.
yeah. So Anand, this was a slide. I mean, just before you came in, I was telling this.
Yeah, yeah.
Of the 100,
Mhm.
let's say 14% of all green cards only are allocated to the skill-based, employment-based visa. 13% goes to refugees. 21% is the family-based, and 45%. Most of it is all family-based. The chain migration, which Trump really talked about, and so no wonder the
Hmm.
backlog has grown over the last 7-8 years, because the demand has always outstripped the supply here.
Supply.
So this was, I thought, was interesting here. So everyone in the legislation was talking about it. President Trump was the first one in the last, let's say, in 10 years, who actually brought a proposal which actually favored merit-based skilled immigration, which today Ramaswamy is also talking as part of his pitch. So this is the proposal.
Hmm.
Trump actually built it in 2019, originally built by Jared Kushner. The idea was, you are allocating certain number of green card holders today. Most of it is going to family. Very small goes to the economic, which is the skill-based immigration, diversity, and humanitarian. The logic,
Hmm.
the proposal was keeping the same numbers. Let's reject the family-based quota to the employment-based using point system. The idea was you allocate points by looking at the age, skill, employment offer, higher degrees, someone who's master's or a PhD holder, entrepreneurs, someone who can create jobs, high earning workers. This could be tech executives, uh, you know, C-suite executives, English level examinations. So you actually also make sure that you
Yeah.
get the qualified people. Civics exam, which is integration to the American values and American society, and then financial self-sufficiency. You want people who are self-sufficient. Although the proposal never addressed the 11 million unauthorized immigrants, the idea was, if we flipped this, the entire chain migration which was happening, where brothers and sisters of US citizens can go, without, has no limit, and quickly get in, as opposed to someone who's a PhD holder or a Nobel Prize winner, this would have flipped that scenario. And when they did it, the research, the migration policy did the initial estimates that this proposal would have favored the Indians and Chinese more so than any other nationality. Indians more so because the English language meant that you would have made it. President Trump put this proposal in 2019. Obviously, was shot down by Democrats because the family based was getting rejected. So your DACA proposals, your Dreamers, on all of those people who would have moved from Mexico or Haiti or other places would have lost some of that. This thing. So it became politicized debate. Even the far right didn't like it because I really want to cut down the immigration. I don't want to see the immigration. The whole story that these guys are coming and taking the job. So the proposal was put in place. They never really, it never really went into the legislation, and so the proposal died. But if I look at it over the last 10 years of proposals, and every month or every 6 months, your lawmakers put a proposal with saying, oh, let's do this for the Indian nationals. Oh, let's make this act. None of those acts get passed. So kuch bhi nahi hota ye. So one of the logical proposal was made by the Trump, but really no one really liked that, and it got died down. I now see Republicans actually bringing this a version of this together. Ramaswamy actually was favoring the merit-based proposal. He also said that I also want to bring the civics and financial self-sufficiency into this into the fold here. So essentially, the problem is it's all skewed right now towards family. The idea is, how do you make it more meritocratic and economic so that America becomes competitive? So really, what are the options here? तो सबसे पहले मैं applicants के लिए बोलूंगा. Current immigration requires an overhaul. We all know now, though, this is an antiquated, outdated, archaic system. What I just showed you, the backlog, 4 lakh people are waiting on green cards. Will keep on rising as more and more people come into the country. So really, for applicants, I would say if you want to settle down in a country, look for countries which are favoring other countries which are favoring skilled immigration. Now, this could be many. This could be Germany. This could be Canada. Look at the other options. Don't just restrict yourself to USA, because USA immigration is right now having a lot of problems. Students. Currently, India is one of the top senders for international students along with Chinese. Most Indians love to go here. I mean, I have the stat. I think last year, 7 lakh H1B holders made the cut here or applied for it. Bulk of it were all students. I think Indian students should start to understand the reality of US immigration, that it is really losing its attractiveness here. The kind of backlog for Indian nationals means आप कभी भी यहाँ पे परमानेंट सिटीजन छोड़ो, परमानेंट रेसिडेंट बनने का ही स्कोप नहीं मिल रहा है, because the backlog is so huge. So I would suggest, highly recommend Indian students that you should understand the reality of the US immigration, that while the universities are amazing in general, the path beyond after you get the degree is not so amazing anymore. And so research accordingly how you want to come to this particular country. Companies today, H1B visas, which is the high, the skilled worker visa, is mostly dominated by your tech firms on both US and Indian side of things. If the immigration woes continue, people will start to leave, people will start to move to Canada or other countries. American and Indian companies who want to operate here need to plan for talent. They need to really lobby for the US government to start to lobby to update the laws here. The last update, Anant, by the way, was 1990, was the Immigration Act of 1990, when they made a last skilled labor upgrade. After that, it has always been Nicaraguan update, Chinese update, DACA, Dreamers, undocumented migrant, but nothing has been done for skilled migration except one employment work permit for spouses. Obama did that like 8 years back. One act in 33 years, and you see in the last 33 years number of Indians and Chinese who moved here to study this. Lawmakers, I don't think you're understanding what's the reality here. The reality is people have realized the American immigration system is broken. People like Canada are trying to poach the talent and are taking those talent away from this country. Indian American voters and US lawmakers, you should make this issue more vocal to avoid economic fallout, because the result will be sooner or later, once the people talent start to leave this country, the voting patterns will also start to change, because US will no longer be the most competitive nation. You are going to lose your local county seat. You're going to lose your local council seat. And that's going to impact you not only economically, but also politically. I think that I wanted to, end that presentation today by stating the issue, what we have today. And so that is that. I open now this to our group here. Let's just talk what you all think. I mean, personally, I have gone through this grind over the last 6 years. It's been terrible. Even though I've been privileged, lucky enough with my employer and with the category I'm in, it's broken. The mental stress, the torture you go through as an Indian national to get to a green card, it's no longer funny anymore. And I think what JFK said in 1958, that should be generous, it should be fair. It's not happening. And American lawmakers should really look inward and see how they can make America the most competitive nation in 21st century if they want to compete with China or with India or other nations going forward.
So yeah, I think if I can just go now.
Yeah.
So Arvind, I think I completely empathize with what possibly you've gone through. But I think if you just look at the hindsight, I think this works perfectly for India. I mean, in one way. I mean, we've been talking about the reverse, the brain drain and the reverse brain drain. I mean, I think something which I think Indian government basically should have taken an action of maybe years back. Maybe this is something which America directly, indirectly is helping out India in. I mean, if there are a lot of Indians who are not able to get through the green card, I mean, the only option that they basically have is to come back.
Yeah.
Right. And if they are coming back, it's advantage India. So maybe if I'm in India right now, and if I just speak like an Indian, possibly it works for India in one way or the sorts. The other thing that I possibly would want to see, how these numbers, trend in the coming years, with the advent of generative AI and Chat GPT and whatnot, there are already reports in the market which kind of talks about how the Indians are going to lose their sheen as far as because primarily the Indians are basically in the US and the Western countries because of their technical skills, the coding and whatnot. So if the generative AI and the rest of it is going to take over slowly but surely, uh, do you see? I mean, I don't know if you can forecast right now, but I foresee, and again, technology is always evolving. Maybe in the years to come, there would be a demand for Indians coming over to to do the AI and the generative AI that I'm talking about. But do you see possibly in the years to come that the numbers are going to go down, if not dramatically, but slowly but surely the numbers may just go down, considering the kind of technological environment that we are currently, we are in. So that's one thing, that I would possibly, keeping a close eye. I think these two things, I think it's advantage India. I mean, if I just speak like an Indian. And second is, I think I would just like to keep a close watch of how these numbers trend as far as number of Indians applying for American green card and H-1B visas. I would like to keep a close watch of it in the years to come.
Yeah, and so you raised a good point, Saurav. So one is,
can I add to that?
Let's just counter that, and then I'll let you jump in, Saurav. So Anand, you are right. It is advantage India, which is why India doesn't go out of its way to solve this crisis. So when Modi came here, there was no talk about green card. There was a talk about opening a new US embassy in Bangalore so that people can go instead of. So today, people who are in Bangalore, they have to go and take a train or a flight to go to Chennai or Hyderabad to get a visa, be it a US visit visa or a student visa or any visa. So they brought in a scenario that, let's get an embassy in Bangalore or a consulate in Bangalore, and let's get a consulate in Seattle. Today, Seattle also doesn't have it, so it's the odds that. But no one talked really about the H-1B workers' plight, the green card backlog, because you're right. Actually, people will move back to India if they don't see that America is not giving them the value here. A good example was I'm not remembering the exact name. The guy who started Flipkart, the Bansals. He was an
Bansal,
MBA
yeah.
student at Wharton, University of Pennsylvania. He applied for his green card. Obviously, lottery tha, H-1B, didn't get picked up. Don't have the exact metrics there, what happened there, but he didn't get picked up. And so he got frustrated with the US legal system and he went back, and you know what happened. He went and formed his own company, which today is Flipkart, bought, by the way, by an American company. Advantage India, definitely. But what I've failed to understand is the way America is treating Indians here. I mean, this is the group in the country which is the highest in terms of income. So Indian Americans, Indian nationals are above every other nationality in terms of income. They are most well-off nationality. They are, so by default they are paying the most amount of taxes. But absolutely politically the weakest nationality, the entire demographics of the immigrant population. They have no political power. Even the players you have, like, who are
because
Indian
Indians,
Americans. Yeah, I'll just finish this one, Anant. I'll jump in. Even the players who have, like, Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, they really don't care about the Indian causes. And that's why my last slide was Indian American voters should be vocal about it, because if you as an Indian American are not vocal about it, no one else is going to be vocal about it. And you as an Indian American will end up losing this particular scenario. That's why it's an imperative for all Indians who are living here, Indian Americans, to raise this issue and bring more awareness, because people in India don't have this knowledge. And I'll give you my example with this. I'll end with this, and then Anant, I'll let you chime in. Me, despite doing research about all this, did not have the clue about the whole mess of immigration until I actually landed in America. So someone who's living in UP or Bihar, क्या कितना पता होगा यार उनको? They'll say, यार हम University of Cincinnati में admit आ गया, I got 40%
कनाडा
scholarship.
जाएंगे.
हाँ, कनाडा जाएंगे. So awareness is so low about the whole system, and so we find it after the fact, by which time it's already late. You're in the system. So yeah, Anant, what do you think? I mean, you've been to America a few times. You live in a different country. You've gone through immigration of yourself. What's been your
Yeah.
take on opinion?
Well, there are multiple layers to this whole conundrum. So let me touch upon a few important points. So first and foremost, I think there is both a demand and supply problem, right? So
Very
when it
true.
comes to the demand, a lot of Indians, I mean, Arvind, you and I, when we did our bachelor's in engineering, there were 68 students in our class. How many of them are still living in India? And how many of them immigrated to the US, right?
I
I
would say higher
think
percentage.
more
Yeah.
than 90% of them are today in the US, right? Now, how many of them actually deserve to go and contribute to the US? I mean, how many of them do you think were really that skilled enough to go and live there? I mean, do you think they are
Well,
really stalwarts? Are they really great programmers? Right? So there is a demand problem. Har koi banda, they want to end up in the US. Why? You grow up seeing the West, you grow up seeing the US. The US reflects in um, almost everything you do
Almost everything.
on a daily basis. So naturally, you want to end up there because that's where you see uh, an opportunity to make a lot of money. Whether you deserve that or not, that's a different question. Whether you're willing to work hard for that or not, that's a different question. Now, what has this demand resulted in? The sprouting up of all the third tier and fourth tier universities all across the US, right? Again, I don't want to take any names, but somebody will say Northwestern Missouri State University. Who knows what it is, right? People are willing to shell out cash to go to these places, and the universities are more than happy to accommodate students who are willing to purchase degrees for cash, much like what happens with MBAs today. I mean, no offense to any MBA holders out there, but we all know how the system works. Nobody gets failed and whatnot. So generally speaking, there's a demand problem. There's a demand quality problem. ठीक है? अभी supply का देख ले. First of all, what you're seeing, I see all these slides as a big mess. Right? Look at that flow chart, man. I mean, I'm not even sure what percentage of the State Department or the U.S. Immigration Service, how many of them actually understand this whole flow chart fully enough? Okay, what this shows is this mess called immigration regulation, has resulted because of too much bickering, too much back and forth between the two parties and the not only the lawmakers but also the civil servants themselves.
oh
Right?
yeah.
We talk about Indian babus, we never talk about American babus, right?
Oh yeah.
वो भी इतने ही चूतिया होते हैं, ठीक है? Maybe bigger chutias than Indian
Oh no,
babus.
there's a whole nexus, Anand. So the way it works is, an applicant in this, they're all making money through all of this. That's probably why no one has
Yeah,
interest to solve this problem, because I can give
exactly.
money to a lawyer. Lawyer's making money out of it. There's American
Well,
immigration,
that's the third
consulate.
element of the nexus. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the third wing of the nexus, right? So you have a supply problem where there is a big ecosystem of lawyers, lawmakers, and American babus who are probably benefiting from this whole thing because um, the law is a mess. You don't know which category you fall under.
No, no, you
Um,
do know which category you fall under, but if you look at it, Anand,
but
so
you
this
yourself
the way
said no. But you see, just to go through this flowchart and see where I fit in, for example,
yes.
would take a long time,
So the way it'll
right?
work is, yeah. So the way it'll work is, I mean, you'll start with it. First question is, do you have a job opportunity in the US? Are you already in the US? The answer is no.
Yeah,
Then it'll go through it. Are you having the legal status? No. Then it'll go to the which category? Are you a PhD
yeah,
holder?
sure,
Okay.
sure,
So
sure, sure, sure.
it is there. It's convoluted and complicated,
Yeah,
which an ordinary person will never understand. It's not
it
like
doesn't have to be. It doesn't
it
have to
doesn't
be,
have
but
to
it
be.
has become like that.
It has become like
Second
that.
problem with immigration regulation is it's not keeping up to date with changing geopolitical realities. Okay?
Anand, the
So
last
it's
update
much
was
like
done in
religion.
1990 for
That's what I'm
skilled
saying.
immigration.
It's more or less like religion. Religion
Yeah.
never updates itself, and apparently immigration law doesn't update itself as well.
Yeah.
So I sort of see both going hand in hand in a way. Now, what should Indians do in this situation? See, you and I, we have been living outside India for a considerable period of time. I've been outside for almost 16 years now, right? And I've lived in a few countries. I've spent a considerable amount of time in the US while my wife was there. And I can only tell you one thing. Like, of course, the US has some of the highest pay grades in the world, especially if you end up in the coastal areas in the east or the west coast. But added to that, there is a decaying urban infrastructure that you witness all along. There is a gun culture which is contributing to rapid crime. I mean, we couldn't walk outside our house um, after 9 o'clock in the night, you know. And this was not even downtown Minneapolis. It was slightly outside, but still it was unsafe. Um, uh, Added to that, you have job insecurity, and now because of uh, this convoluted regulation, what happens is you're also constrained by your visa status. I mean, Arvind, you yourself faced this problem last year, and many more people face this, especially when they're in this H-1B backlog. You can't even visit your family in case of emergencies. There are so many people who have lost their parents who were living in India and couldn't even attend their last rites. How miserable is that? How miserable is that? Right? Is that who is to blame? Is it the Indians who place more weight over the visa status over their parents, or is it the stupid regulation that prevents Indians or anyone else from traveling abroad while they're under this status? And why is it that you can't visit or travel abroad when you're in that backlog? I just don't get it. To me, it seems like a very stupid regulation from the so-called advanced country in the world. And let me tell you one more thing added about the advancement of the US. Of course, it is a superpower. Saurav, you touched upon artificial intelligence, right? That, maybe it might swallow some jobs. Now, guess what? If you consider AI to be one of those prime technological shifts in our progress as an economy, as a race, then just look at previous technological innovations of a similar scale, starting from the steam engine and more recently the internet. There were similar fears that all these technological advancements would swallow up jobs. What has happened, right? Abhi internet aaya tha, kya hua? Did people lose jobs? I mean, jobs got uh, jobs got replaced, transformed in a certain way. It's also called creative destruction, this whole phenomenon, right? What is creative destruction? Old jobs become obsolete and people have to essentially retrain themselves and move on to better other jobs that are in line with the current technological frontier. So people who were, trained as stenos, people who were using typewriters, we don't use typewriters anymore. Everyone learned how to use a computer. And honestly, if you know how to use a typewriter, it doesn't take a lot of time to learn Word or Microsoft Office and graduate to a laptop. So the same thing happens with AI. AI is going to change the way we do certain jobs. For example, screenwriters. There's this whole strike going on in Hollywood about fears with respect to fears over that jobs might be at stake, and
the streaming platforms,
but again,
revenue and all of that, the sharing of the pay and everything.
Exactly. But people are not focusing on the real question at hand, which is maybe screenwriting will not be a human task anymore. So what happens to the thousands of people who are employed as in that profession? They will just move on. Where will people go? Where will they be headed? We don't know. But if AI can write better scripts and that generates revenue, ultimately, a society like America is profit seeking.
Yep.
And it goes regardless of what happens.
Yeah, and you touched on an important point, Anant. Yoga. So my take here is, I think, and you missed the first slide here. I mean, Canada is already wooing Americans. Canada has played a very smart game, bringing these H1B holders, saying, "Hey, aap aao yahan pe, come here, get your work permit." Obviously, they have their ulterior motive. Canadian economy is not big enough to lap up all these jobs and create those jobs. It's a smaller economy than US. It's 1/10 of it. But the intent here is Canada is trying to make their statement, you are welcome here. Germany is doing something similar on the European side, saying, "Hey guys, you're welcome here. You don't need German anymore. Come and do it." I think America will soon realize, and I think this could be a 2024 election talking point, may not be may not be in the broader talking point, but would be a talking point in the Indian American states like Virginia, Texas, New York,
Yes,
California.
absolutely. But I don't think it's
People
going to
are
help Indians.
it's not going to help
I
with
don't think
Indians,
it's
and
going to help Indians.
I'll
You
tell
know
you
why?
why.
You know why?
And I know why. I'll let you finish, and
Why?
I'll go with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the problem,
Go
and I
for
was
it.
telling you, was Indians are politically weak here. Indians don't contribute to the political segment of the society. I'm not talking I'm not talking H1B holders. हमारे को तो power ही नहीं होता H1B and green card holders. The citizens, I'm talking the citizens themselves. So when your citizens are as a citizen, you're not politically savvy. You're not politically connected. You're not going to make a dent into the immigration system or into the laws here, because laws, the way you make changes in this country is very different. You lobby it. Lobbying is very legal here. You lobby for the cause. You make it a election issue. You make it a lawmaker issue at the council level, at the state level, at the city level, and then it becomes a higher issue. अगर आप हल्ला मचाओगे टेक्सास, वर्जीनिया और 10-15 स्टेट में, then Biden will realize कि यार ये क्या हो रहा है.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, Indians are not doing it. Indians, we're
Indians are
all
not politically
disjointed.
active. See,
We're not
Indians
politically
need to
active.
organize. Indians first need to organize. See,
Correct.
whenever I ended up in Indian gatherings in the US, right, in different settings, the constant conversation would be about immigration, but nobody would provide any solutions. Nobody would think about how to do it politically. First and foremost, Abhi, again, what happens? The main reason is, Indians, even if they immigrate, they still stay Indians. You know what I mean by that? मेरे घर में साफ सुथरा है तो ठीक है, बाहर कोई कचरा होने दो, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
Correct.
ठीक है? They go with the same mentality, and they fail to organize. They fail to think about larger issues. Larger issues identify करने के लिए क्या चाहिए? You need to know more about what's happening around you, and you get that through media, by reading books, by following what's happening around you. We don't do any of that. ठीक है? But I'll give credit to Indians living in the UK, especially the second and third level generation Indians.
Spot on.
They have organized. If you see the last UK general election, what happened? Indians were a major reason why Jeremy Corbyn lost.
Correct. They all made them financial funding to the conservatives. Indians here need to do that. यहाँ पे Anant and Saurav,
US में क्या करते हैं?
We'll go and do hobnob with Pramila Jayapal, and they'll do the caste bill, immigration bills, and let's say no to caste immigration.
Yeah.
This is your priority. This should be the focus for you. You should not encourage this whole caste discrimination nonsense, because that is not helping you.
I'm sorry to say, I am sorry to say this. All Indians care about, those Indians who move to the US care about maybe 2 or 3 things. One, jaake green card kamao. First, number one. Second thing, have kids in the US who become US citizens and get your parents to look after them for 6 months and on a rotation basis. This is objective number 2. Third objective is take all your dollars and invest them in India. Buy every new apartment that comes up. These are the only 3 goddamn things that Indians care about. And Indians living in America care about.
You're right, and I think what will happen, I think Saurav, you alluded to this, is 5 साल में ये law नहीं बदलेगा. And I'm pretty clear. I mean, it does not be the way you change in America is different. The Latin community did it. Cubans did it. They formed the base so big in Florida, they were able to change the sequence for them. I think people will start to realize कि यार यहाँ पे हमारे लिए पैसे के अलावा कुछ नहीं है. People who want to settle down will start to leave the country. India will start to maybe benefit out of it. I mean, especially tech. आज के जमाने में लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं यार? I mean, and Anand, you pointed it out, right? Decaying infrastructure, crime in San Francisco, it's a shocker. I mean, San Francisco, parts of it looks like third world.
And the woke movement. Indians are more woke than white Americans, boss.
I know. That's the other part, right? So people will realize,
I'll give you a story.
A 2 crore salary or a 1 crore salary in Bangalore, and then they'll say, let's pack our bags and move to Bangalore.
And see, I know a case, right? This person, acquaintance that I know, he or she did an MBA in one of the top US schools there. ठीक है, उसके बाद that person went and worked in Amazon, obviously for a very high salary, right? This person is working for Amazon, and then suddenly she goes on these protests where she carries these banners saying, Amazon, you should do more for gender equality, you should do more for climate, and blah blah blah. What the hell? Why don't you just quit your job?
Indians should be focused on bringing awareness to this rather than bringing awareness
Hey,
to
this
the
is
vote.
bipolar. This is bipolar identity, right? This is like I'm a corporate honcho by day. I'm a activist, woke
Yeah.
activist by night.
Unfortunately, Indians are going to face the brunt of it because if you look at it, I mean, this number is not changing. 482,000 in the limbo. This is going to go and go. And I think one day they'll snap and they'll say, "Yaar, hum nahi aayenge." I'm
Mhm.
not, and I want to give, I mean, I put this disclaimer. We are not discouraging Indians to come to USA. By all means, if you want to make money, get the best education, come for it. Just understand the reality of what you're getting into. It is no longer the American dream of 19th century and 20th century. Even until until 2005, 2006, it was fine. So in the last 15 years, it has broken. And unless and until they fix it and they solve it, it's only going to hurt Indians as a nationality. And as India becomes more powerful, I think Indians, as China is already doing it, Chinese have started to go back and say, I will build companies in Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen. I'm not going to go and stuck into this. China is also having the same issue. And I
Look,
feel,
dude. Look, dude. Unless Indians get over this addiction of making dollars, and more importantly, as unless parents change their attitude of how they find matches for their daughters and sons,
oh yeah,
this
that's
will not
true.
change. This will
It'll
not
take time.
change. It
And
will
and
never.
I
It,
think
it won't happen in my lifetime for sure.
I
I
think
hope
the
they move to
another
other
important
countries.
event. I think the another important event, and Anant might be a little closer to this. I mean, it's just that I kind of hear about it. I mean, de-dollarization is just possibly figments of imagination, though. But you never know, in possibly in the days to come, if certain other currency. I wouldn't say dollar is going to go away anytime soon. But if dollar loses its little bit of shine, let me. Or I wouldn't again. Hegemony might be a wrong word. I think it's still going to be there. But if dollar depreciates, what would be the impact of it? I think, as Anand just said, I mean, all that we basically have in our mind is $200. But if dollar, the de-dollarization that I just spoke about, if that happens, I'm not saying again in 5 years or 10 years, but maybe 15, 20, 25 years, because there is some considerable movement there. I mean, I know dollar is still intact as far as the global, as far as it being the global currency is concerned. But maybe in the days to come, if dollar loses its sheen, that also might trigger a lot of Indians who think about moving to India to US. That might also play a role somewhere. Again, it may not happen, but just
I don't
a
think
thought.
I don't think that will happen. Look, whenever a global currency has changed, it has always happened, at least to my limited knowledge, it has always happened after a major war has taken place, right? Before the First World War, before the Second World War, the British sterling pound used to be the de facto global currency of
Right,
sorts.
right. Yeah.
After that, the US dollar took prominence. Now, unless there is some kind of a massive shift where one superpower is able to impose its one or more superpowers are able to impose the will on other nations, this thing will not happen. Now, let me give you an example of how some countries have tried to de-dollarize. I wouldn't say it's de-dollarized, but sort of come out of the US dollar / SWIFT system. So you saw this recent oil arrangement between Russia and India, where India would agree to pay for rubles, and there would be some exchange. Was it of food grains or something? I forget. But there's already cracks appearing in that agreement. Now, Russia is not willing to provide as many deep discounts in new oil shipments to India. So again, when it becomes a bilateral trade type of trade, more or less a barter kind of a trade, things start to break down. That's why money actually came into existence, a common unit of exchange and value reference, of which a dollar is a part of. So again, why does everyone use dollar? It's not just because the US is the supreme power in the world and imposes its will. It does, through monetary means, but it's also because you need a reference currency to
That's true.
to make trade more liquid. And because the US is the most powerful currency, it is, it's in the US has enough financial backing to support the dollar. That's why people have no issues using the dollar as a reference rate. Where else do you have such an example in the world? People thought China would take that place soon, but China has its own demographic and other economic woes to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be screwed in 15, 20 years. So this is going to continue until we have a new major world event. Let me put it.
Yeah. So let me just bring it back to the immigration. We'll end it here. I mean, we spent like 45, 50 minutes on this one. I think I'll end with this. I think companies and universities will soon realize the day that Indians will stop coming, then they will notice, yaar, ye problem ho raha hai, kuch karte hain, let's work with the US government and help them. Until that day, there's not going to be any changes. There won't be any immigration overhauls. Indians should continue to lobby. But I think, Anand, you rightly said it. Yeah, I think as an Indian nationals, we are not united. We are not that guy who is politically active and then say, I'm change karenge. We are used to getting things, de do hame. We are used to receiving things on plate. Unfortunately, this is an item which you will not get on plate. You have to work for it and then get it.
We don't think because school mein we learn by rote.
Correct.
Right?
It's fundamental problem.
We did the same thing in engineering.
Correct. We did all of that.
Right.
It's a fundamental
and we carry
problem
that forward.
We carry that forward. And so my take here is, I think Indians are in for a pain for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, that's a hard reality. Kuch kar nahi sakte hain. Students, this is a big information for you guys. Just realize, don't chase just because you want to get into the Harvard, aapki zindagi theek ho jayegi. Yes, Harvard is a great, but just have that expectation that USA will not want to take you forever because they're going to put you these high H1B limits. I did not even talk about the whole H1B lottery system, that you could be a Harvard guy and you will have to go through a lottery. And that guy, Anant, at Northwestern Missouri State University, has the equal chance as you as a Harvard MBA or a Harvard PhD holder to get a H1B. And that's how messed up the system is. America will lose its sheen the day will continue to lose its sheen. The day they realize it is probably the day they will have to course correct it. Until that point of time, despite being the number one in terms of being the student sending, the immigration system is going down the drain. Unfortunately, the horrible scenario, and awareness is the first way as someone we could do it. We'll end it here. So I hope this was very useful for all our audiences to understand a little bit what's happening in America. But I really want to switch the gear. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Saurav.
Yeah, so before you just ended, Arvind, so my question is, if I want to come to America and let's say stay in America, so you're advising me to come to New Mexico City rather than New York?
No, I'm not advising you to come to the New Mexico City. I'm just saying that America aana hai, aao, bilkul, I mean, come here with the intention. The mentality now should be, until the law changes, America or UAE mein koi farak nahi hai. UAE is very clear. I will not give you citizenship. I'll not give you permanent residency. You come here on a work permit, make your money and go.
Make your money and go. That's it. At least they're very clear on what they will and will not give.
UAE is very clear about it. You are here to make money. You are here to go and you will leave. You are not going to get a UAE citizenship. America says you are welcome as an immigration.
But you really want UAE citizenship, honestly?
No, that's a separate story. But what I'm trying to say is, for Indians, aao, paise kamao, padho. But think it like a UAE. It's a temporary place. You will only get a temporary work permit if you're lucky. You'll make your money. Think of that in that manner and have that attitude. Don't be that hum aa gaye, hum yahan settle ho jayenge like the previous two generations. It's not happening for Indians. And if you have that mindset change, it'll be very clear. That's what I would say for all the Indians who are living in India. Come here, have that realistic expect. All right, we'll end it here. Great conversation, guys. But I hope our audience you liked it. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share it with your friends and family. We're just starting here. There is so much we're going to talk about in the future. We are here to try and share our common man's view to on the daily topics, trying to give you the perspective what mainstream media is today actually missing. giving that balanced view, giving the both sides of the view, giving the historical perspective. So please really like that video. It takes only 10 seconds. Please subscribe and please share. Thank you, everyone. We will talk again later.